Hello everyone. I wasn't sure how long it would take me to be able to record this video, but I'm glad to say I could get around to it fairly quickly. Today I'm showing you what my brand new 625 horsepower supercharged E92 M3 is like on the British roads. Now this car I bought not primarily as a track car, but with the intent of taking it on track with relative frequency. However, I did still want something that I could enjoy on the roads. Now, a couple of things have been of concern lately with regards to getting this car outside. The main two are the combination of the British autumn weather and the Toyo AAAR tyres that this car is wearing. Now, those are essentially cut slicks. They are a dry weather track day tyre with the absolute legal minimum of tread in them. And our roads can get pretty greasy and interesting at the best of times. So it's mid-October at the time of recording, and I wasn't sure whether I'd really get to enjoy this car at all this year. Fortunately, we seem to be experiencing something of a mild spell, so the moment I saw the weather report with a big round sun on it, I registered the car for the road and decided to get it out. Now, I've been quite cautious with this car this morning. I'll freely admit, it scares the bejesus out of me. Not so much with the outright speed, because the speed is something that I have control over, and we'll get onto the speed aspect in a little bit, but simply because so much about it is totally new. Haven't driven an M3 in ages, and I recall that car in inclement conditions could go a little sideways without a lot of warning. This has about 50% more torque and about 80% more power than that car did. So of course I am going to be very, very wary of it. I don't know the tyres at all. I don't really know the engine that well either. There is so much to learn. The car also rides very, very low. And I went to visit my friend James earlier this morning and didn't have an awful lot of fun on the way into his, because you've got some seriously cambered roads and yeah, not this car's natural environment to say the least. However, as a continent cruiser, this car's actually relatively good. So long as you don't expect it to go into any sort of multi-story, it's pretty fine. It's not too noisy in here. The only rattles are from some of my camera kit, and you can hear the noise from the diff and various things, the gearbox and whatnot, because the car has got solid bushes or PowerFlex black bushes throughout. If you want to know a little bit more about the spec, I did a video on that already, and I'll probably do some more going into a lot more detail about it. KWV3 suspension on it, which is something that I was very impressed by, because I know that that's the same suspension setup that AC Schnitzer use on their cars. This car was built basically as a Nürburgring slag. It's designed to drive all the way there, ham around, put in some good times, and then drive home in relative comfort. Now, at low speeds on pretty badly surfaced roads, this car is fairly firm and the ride is pretty busy. However, if I'm being completely honest, I think my initial impression was probably a bit too harsh of the car's ride, a pun not intended, because I'm of course coming from my Evora, which rides very, very well for that type of car. In fact, compared with a contemporary 911, the Evora actually rides, I would say, even better. A current 991.2 GTS is very, very firm. This, I think, rides probably no worse than a 991 GT3, or in fairness, the John Cooper Works equipped minivan that I drove last year. That was an incredibly firm and busy ride, and that car certainly didn't have the performance to back it up, whereas this one really does. Now, in the spec video, I talked a little bit about the expectations I had of the car and how it compared. Well, now, of course, I've had a few more hours behind the wheel, so I can talk in even more detail about the things that really took me by surprise and have continued to impress me now I've got a couple of 100 miles under my belt. A lot of them weren't very exciting miles, but all miles are important when you're learning a new car. Now, the brakes in this thing are just astonishing. Absolutely massive 380mm Brembo 6-pot front, 4-pot rears with J-hook discs. They're 2-piece, plenty of feel through the pedal. They do the job wonderfully. Now, the other thing that I really like about this car is the amount of steering feel that they've managed to maintain. This generation of M3 in particular, very good handling car for sure, but just doesn't deliver that last word in steering feel that you think it should. However, this one transmits so much information through the wheel, it's really quite remarkable. I haven't really had the chance to truly lean on the car and explore its performance because I know its abilities are absolutely stratospheric, and I'm gonna do that on track because I really don't want to get this thing wrong on the road, because if I do, it's going to go badly wrong. But even on this kind of road, which is actually pretty smooth for British roads, you get so much information being passed through this lovely KMP wheel, which is also adorned with some spectacularly nice carbon paddles. Now, I'm currently driving the car in regular auto mode. Now, that may seem a little bit defeatist, but one of the things I really love about this car is that when I don't want to push on too much, I can simply do this, and I just bimble along and just have a nice old time. And then when I'm ready to have some serious fun, I simply press the button marked M Sport. That equates to the M button, which is on the original steering wheel, and turns the car into M drive mode. Now, if you're familiar with, say, the new M3 and M4, they got 2 M buttons. These older cars have just the one. This is another big improvement over my E46, which didn't have any such controls. Now, this car having passive suspension, the donor car didn't have EDC anyway. It doesn't change that at all, but you can set a number of other parameters to be changed when you hit the button. In this car, it weightens up the servotronic steering just a little bit. It changes the throttle response from regular to sport. There is a Sport Plus throttle response as well. It doesn't give the car any more power. The power button in these doesn't give you any more go, unlike in the old M5 and M6 with their V10. Those famously only gave you 400 horsepower until you pressed the power button. But I don't like the Sport Plus throttle response because I feel that it makes the car too edgy. And when you've got this amount of power, edginess is not something that I really want. The best thing though is that it enables the MDM mode, and that's this car's halfway house traction control setup. Now, the regular traction control in this car is just far too aggressive. It cuts in too easily and just too firmly, and it really does spoil the fun. Especially when you've got this amount of power, even the slightest undulation in the road can sometimes send the thing blinking and it'll sap the power, and it just makes things a little bit annoying. But you still want to have a safety net of some sort in case things do go properly wrong, and that's where MDM comes in. It allows you to have a little bit of slip, but not too much. When this car came out, it was one of the first cars of its type to have a traction mode like that. The E46 was only on or off, and from my experience of how sideways that car could go with very little warning, I'm certainly glad to have this. So all I need to do to change this car from nice, relatively comfy cruising car into totally ready to attack a back road is just press a button and I'm off to go. Now, the DCT gearbox in this car has 6 shift modes. There's 5 that are normally available, and there's a special 6th one available to you if you're willing to turn the traction control completely off. I haven't tried that yet. Now, when I'm driving in auto mode, I have this car set in setting number 2, and when I'm driving it in sporty mode, I have it in setting number 5. And that introduces things like sexy downshifts and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very nice indeed. Now, these shifters are carbon fiber, and they have magnets in them which give them the nicest shift action you can imagine. So if I put my car in my sporty mode, you just click, and the gearbox responds pretty well. It's not as good as a modern PDK box, but it does what I tell it when I tell it. I haven't really had any issues with it so far. The only issues I've had with the car have been on occasion at fairly low RPM, say about 1800, when I put my foot down in auto mode, the car sort of popping and farting a bit and not really making any progress. But that could be a mapping issue, or it could just be the simple fact that this car hasn't been run in anger for quite some time. It was laid up for a few months before I got it. That being said, it's doing a remarkable job, and it's nice and squeak-free too, considering how stiffly set up it is. This car really does give a feeling of being one sort of solid piece. When I drove it, I was struggling to think what car it reminded me of, and then the other night it came to me. It reminds me of the AMG GTR, and to some extent the Nissan GTR as well. Now, the power delivery, of course, is totally different to both of those cars because this is a supercharged engine and those are both turbocharged. But the AMG GTR is a car which just has this feeling of being one big solid lump with just no flex or movement within the chassis at all. This thing does very much the same. It really impresses. And one thing that's missing compared to when I test drove this that I really want to put back on as soon as I can is the nice big sun strip that went here. And that cut out, of course, a lot of the sky, and it made this feel like a real proper race car. When you combine it with that massive power bulge that is far bigger from inside than it is from outside for whatever reason, it does give this car a feeling of being something special, and that's really good and quite an achievement. No, it's not the same at all as driving the Lotus around, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted something that was, in as many ways as it could be, a different thing, and this really, really is. So we're going to come off the main road now and take it down some slightly twistier roads, which hopefully I'm going to get a couple of clean runs at, and so you guys can see just a little preview of what you'll do, because I'm certainly nowhere near to exploring the car's full performance just yet. First and second, I'm certainly not putting my foot down all the way or revving out. In first, I think it's going to spin up in basically any conditions. Second, in these conditions, it'll certainly have a go. When I test drove this car, it was an immaculately beautiful day. It was about 30 degrees, and when the guy drove it in second, it was spinning up. It was not uncontrollable at all, but you could feel it, and until I know this car a bit more intimately, it's something I'm going to be very wary of. From third and onwards, though, you can really push on. Now, it's been so long since I've driven a regular M3, and even then it wasn't really for any period of time, that I've sort of forgotten what the regular car is like. But this one has a reasonable slug of torque in the mid-range. Not a huge amount, certainly nowhere near what an M4 will give you, especially a moderately tuned one, but it's enough. You can make very, very swift progress just by riding the mid-range. From about 3 to 6 or so will certainly shift. And this is completely linear power. I'll put up the dyno graph that I got with the car, and you can see that it just keeps on making more and more and more power all the way to that stratospheric red line. Peak power is at something like 8,300 RPM. This is a real old school last of line engine. And any of you that are watching this and thinking like, yeah, rod bearings and throttle actuators, well, both of them were replaced on this because this engine was completely rebuilt shortly before the supercharger conversion was done. The people that built this car weren't going to go to all the hassle of doing all this work and then putting it on a slightly sketchy older engine. Now the exhaust in this car is a Russfello's test pipe, so it's a primary cat delete with an X pipe in the middle. It's got a racing cat in it, which is a 200 cell cat. What brand, if there is such a thing, I don't know, but it will pass emissions. And it's got the regular M3 back box with the 2.5 exhaust mod. Now if you Google that, you'll see a guy called Paul the Welder, I think is his name, and he does a mod on these cars. I know a lot of cars that have a similar thing done. Basically, they open up the exhaust and they cover up a load of the perforations inside it, so it basically makes it not a straight pipe, but half of one. So there's 3 stages, the 2, 2.5, and the 4, with the 4 being essentially an actual straight pipe. Mine is the 2.5, which is a midway house, and the hope is that it's then going to be nice to listen to when you're on the road, but not too loud so that I get kicked off track days. I'm gonna go and get it noise tested as soon as I can, and well, I'm hoping that it's gonna be the right volume, because it'll be slightly upsetting to have to modify this, especially when it sounds so nice. There's really very little in the way of pops and crackles from this system, and that suits me just fine, because I tend to think that there's something of a gimmick in a lot of modern cars, and this is real, pure sound. There's nothing artificial being piped into here. It's all engine and exhaust. There's more induction noise in this too compared with the standard M3. And that's because there's a nice little air filter down at the front where one of your fog lights would be that comes with the ESS kit. There's 4 stages of kit from ESS. This is the first of the intercooled ones, and there's only 1 kit above it, which is the 650 horsepower kit. You can convert from one to the other. Costs about $2,500, so about £2,000. And that'll include extra injectors, a different pulley system, and a new map and stuff like that. But for now, I'm getting on well with the 625 horsepower that I've got. The seats in here are another real plus point. They're Cobra Nagaros, the same type of seat that I had fitted to my Evora. I didn't put these in here, they came with the car. They're one of the things that when I saw the advert made me think, I think that guy's built a car like I would, because these are sporty, but also nice and comfortable. There we go. There is a sneaky little preview of just what my supercharged M3 will do. And at no point there did I actually rev it all the way out. It's quite quick, and it does exactly what I wanted it to do, which is provide me with the speed, if not more so, of an M4, but be a real event, sound absolutely amazing, and just deliver a challenge. And that's what this car's gonna be. Learning this thing, becoming a quick driver in this thing is not gonna come easily, and that's fine. And I'm gonna get some help to teach me how to drive it properly on track. And I look forward to showing you guys that video when it happens. But for now, when the sun is out and the roads are dry, I'm gonna do my very best to enjoy this and that beautiful V8 sound. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.